On this episode of our Know the Lingo series, we are breaking down another word in the wedding industry to help you best plan your wedding, and this one might be one of the most important ones. It is RSVP, which in my Southern American French translation is Respondez s'il vous plaît, which just means please reply. If you're a guest watching this video, or you have been a guest at a wedding, or you think you're gonna be a guest at a wedding, that is what we want you to do. Please reply by the date your sweet friends have asked you to, because that goes into a lot of final details that they have to wrap up for their wedding before they can sit back and relax and enjoy their big day. Okay, now if you're a couple, before we get into the nitty gritty of your RSVP count, I want to talk first about your guest count. So you're gonna have a total number of guest count, which is gonna be, let's just say 250 people. So you're inviting 250 people to your wedding. You're probably not gonna order 250 invitations because some of those people are gonna be in the same household, if they're married or have kids, whether you're inviting like grown kids or children in the same family on the same invite. So if they're physically in the same household, you can give just one invitation. If you've got some single friends that live in the same household, we recommend typically over the age of 25 giving everybody a +1, but you don't really have to. We just think it's a very nice thing to do. But you can also put them on the same invitation if you want to, and then just put like +1 by each of their names and let them know that they are bringing a +1. Little side note here too, again, if you're a guest watching this, if you don't get a +1 on your invitation, or it doesn't say and family or and children, do not bring extra people, but we'll dive into that at the end a little bit more. So back to your original guest count. You're gonna have your full guest counts, like 250, but you may only send out 175 invitations because of people living in the same household. When you are thinking about your guest list and your final RSVP head count, we want you to think in terms of groups of 8, if at all possible. And the reason for that is most tables, so 60-inch rounds, are gonna be like a standard table and then an 8-foot table at a venue rectangle. Typically comfortably seat about 8 people. Yes, you can squeeze 9, you can squeeze 10, but if you're doing chargers and dishes and these big floral arrangements on the table, 8 is gonna be like comfortable, because then you've also got like legs on the round tables and all of that. So for your guest comfort, I typically like to recommend thinking in groups of 8. So every time you add 8 people to your guest count, your overall guest count, you've got to add in another table. So that may be more rentals, that will be another centerpiece or garland, depending on what you're doing on your tables, more candles. So every time you add in 8 people, that's gonna raise your cost of decor. Every time you add anybody, it's gonna raise your cost of food, alcohol, and then obviously your rental items. Typically rental items, it's kind of like the hot dog bun situation from Father of the Bride, where like a table seats 8, but you rent in groups of 10. And it's never a bad thing to have extra silverware and napkins, because inevitably somebody's gonna drop something on the floor, and it's nice to have a fresh set. We want them to have a fresh fork or napkin or whatever they drop. And same with your glassware. Again, it's so much better to have extra in that area to include also your vendors, but then again, if somebody drops something. So we don't worry about the 10 setting as much as we worry about like the groups of 8, because we'll at least know we'll have 2 extra, right? So think through your guest count, and then your RSVPs are what is gonna drive those final rental numbers, along with your final floral decor items. So if you have 10 tables versus 12 tables, all of that goes into those final numbers that your florist and your caterer have to put in orders for. And then your rental company typically needs your final payment between 30 days and 2 weeks prior to your wedding. So we again recommend having your final RSVP count, yeah, that's right, do about 4, maybe 5-ish weeks, again, to give a little bit of leeway time to get those RSVPs back. So that way, by the time you're recapping with everybody, touching base with people who haven't sent in their RSVPs, you can solidify and go into those final few weeks of wedding planning with those solidified numbers. Now, you are typically gonna have people who don't RSVP and show up, or RSVP and don't show up for whatever reason. Maybe they forgot to RSVP, or they told you they weren't coming and something changed. They were able to find a sitter last minute and they wanna come, or the opposite is true. They had a sitter booked, the sitter got sick or something happened and they now can't come. So inevitably you will have some empty seats at your reception, but we try our hardest to get those numbers as solid as possible with a few extra chairs. So say you don't need 8 at a table, you need 6 at one table or 7 at another. You're gonna have a couple extra seats for those people who didn't RSVP and showed up. But we don't wanna always like set a whole extra table for that. So we do kind of take that into consideration when making your final guest count.